Welcome to the Well Woman Show, where we interview women executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
And you're listening to the Well Woman Show,
where motivated women achieve fulfillment and well-being.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
Take time for myself by coming to things like Well Woman Drinks.
To be accepting of myself no matter what. Step away from judgment as much as possible.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
You're going to be in for a good ride. I don't regret anything. Everything I've ever done, I've learned from it, one way or another, good or bad.
Being a little bit selfish for yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first and then give what's left.
I'm a woman. I would prefer to tell my own story. My story, though it's very personal, is universal.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show. And now your host, Giovanna Rossi.
Hi, Giovanna Rossi here, and welcome to another episode of the Well Woman Show, where I interview women leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs about their lives and their road to becoming and being who they are today. Are you at the top of your game professionally but feeling burned out, or finding it hard to focus on your goals, or unfulfilled personally? Or are you in transition, simply juggling so many things you find it hard to take care of your own needs? Well, you're not alone. We all need to activate the 4 universal superpowers. These are the internal strengths and abilities we all already have but don't use all the time. Superpowers can be cultivated, and they include awareness, intuition, action, and acceptance. Toward the end of the show, in a segment called Superpowers for Success, I ask my guest about her superpowers, and the answers will give you the strength, perspective, and power to live a well woman life. I'm so happy you're here, so thanks for tuning in. This episode of the Well Woman Show is brought to you by Collective Action Strategies, supporting organizations that support women and families, and by Well Woman Life Movement Challenge Quiz, your resource for living your best life. If you're in burnout or major transition, this is your time to figure out what's holding you back from making the changes you need to make in order to live your fullest, most joyful life. The cause of all of our challenges, personal or professional, can actually be rooted in the lack of internal superpowers and or external supports. Our Well Woman Life framework tells you which stage of the Well Woman life cycle you're in and what to do about it so you can truly live your best life. You can find out more at wellwomanlife.com/quiz. I'm so thankful for support from Natural Awakenings magazine in New Mexico, a monthly green, healthy lifestyle publication, and for support from High Desert Yoga, promoting optimum physical health, clarity of mind, and spiritual inspiration for all. Hello, well women. So it's the week before the midterm elections in the U.S. We've had a lot going on here. Some good things and some bad things in the news, making the news, to the point where people are really fragile and really hurting and really wanting to make a difference. And so the way that we can do that is to vote early or vote on November 6th. And let's see what we can do, if we can turn this ship around. On the show today, I'm speaking with Lucy Sullivan, who is Executive Director of 1,000 Days, an advocacy organization working to improve maternal and young child nutrition, particularly during the critical first 1,000 days. And I thought this was a great interview to air today because of the whole question of what is your role in advocacy and what is your role in public policy? What is your role in the electoral process? Are you voting? Are you helping elect candidates? Have you been out canvassing and making phone calls and fundraising for candidates? Or are you actually running for office? All of these are different forms of being involved. And I want to really honor you for wherever you are in that journey, as long as you're doing something. The notion that we're too busy to get involved, or that we just want to remain positive and so we can't really get involved in advocacy or politics, It's really a self-protective mechanism that doesn't actually work. You think you're protecting yourself against or from negativity and politics, but actually what you're doing is creating more of what you don't want by not being involved. So this is my plea to you here on the Well Woman Show to amplify your voice through your actions. We can make a difference when we speak up and when we take action. We only have our voice and our body, right? Those are the two things that we can do anything with. We can speak up and we can go vote or go do actions. And so I encourage everyone to participate. And if you have a story about how you participated or what you did, or you have questions about how to get more involved, go over to Facebook, over to our group. Actually, you can go to wellwomanlife.com/Facebook. It'll take you straight there. And we can have a conversation about it over there as well. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. We talk a lot about different policies and sort of the ins and outs of the 1,000 days, the first 1,000 days of a baby's life. And we talk about what you can do to support breastfeeding moms. Even if you are not a breastfeeding mom, there's lots that you can do. How to begin the shift, to shift the culture around breastfeeding, i.e., how do we address the sexualization of women's bodies? One of my favorite topics. And also we talk about new dietary guidelines being developed for children under 2 and pregnant moms. So lots going on the Well Woman Show. Definitely want to hear your story about advocacy and getting involved and voting. And so check out wellwomanlife.com/Facebook and join the conversation in there. Now, here is my interview with Lucy Martinez Sullivan. I'm speaking with Lucy Martinez Sullivan this morning. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. I have looked into your organization a little bit, and I'm curious to hear more. As we heard in the introduction, you're the executive director of 1,000 Days, an advocacy organization in the United States based in Washington, D.C., working to improve maternal and young child nutrition. And Lucy, I want to get into all of what you're up to, but let's just start by giving listeners a little bit of information about what are you working on right now and how does it impact women's lives?
Absolutely. Well, so 1,000 Days, we work on improving nutrition and the nutritional health of moms and babies, both here in the United States and around the world. And we focus on the 1,000 days between pregnancy and a child's second birthday because it's a really critical window of opportunity to impact a child's future health, their brain development, and to ensure that societies are more prosperous and have greater equity. So in terms of what we're working on, we cover a range of policy issues. And one of the issues that has been in the news lately is breastfeeding. So we do a lot of advocacy to promote, protect, and support women to breastfeed. Because we understand and we know from the science that breastfeeding provides a baby with the perfect nutrition that he needs for the first several months of his life. Breastfeeding powers baby's brain development like nothing else. Mm-hmm. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that breastfeeding plays a critical role in women's health.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I have a background in women's health policy, and a lot of the projects I worked on include breastfeeding, if not, directly, indirectly. And so it's a super important topic that I think unless you're really into it, like a breastfeeding mom or someone very close to a breastfeeding mom, I think there's still a lot of
sort of myths about it, or bad information, or just even the norm around feeding babies is still needing to shift.
Exactly. We very much live in a bottle feeding culture, and I think that in part has been promoted by infant formula companies wanting to sell more products. And I think what's really interesting is, that there has been a great renaissance in the understanding of the importance of breastfeeding for not only children's health and for children's survival, but also for women's well-being. And that's something that you simply can't get out of a bottle of formula. So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more about that and what that looks like.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, obviously some women do need formula, and there's no judgment, at least on my part or on part of the show. There's no judgment on like women who do use formula or end up using formula or what have you. I think the conversation that needs to happen is really, how do we shift the thinking around breastfeeding so that more women feel empowered to actually breastfeed, both, just like the information for moms, but also the support systems around moms, so that, grandmas and partners and other caregivers are also supportive.
That's exactly right. It is about shifting that conversation and recognizing the broader societal, cultural, and economic factors that contribute to women's decisions around how they choose to feed their baby. Women need to be able to make choices that are best for them and their families. And some women choose to formula feed. But in this country, far too many women have no choice but to use formula, right, because they weren't supported, because they don't have paid parental leave. They're going back to work within 2 weeks after having given birth. They don't have employers that are supportive of them, pumping milk or having flexible schedules. And so we make it really difficult in this country for women to reach their breastfeeding goals. And part of the work that we do at 1,000 Days is to try to highlight some of the barriers that women face and knock down those barriers. And paid leave is a big part of that. But so are hospital practices. What happens when a woman gives birth at a hospital or maternity facility really does impact whether she can get a good start in breastfeeding her baby. Because if you don't get a good start, it's hard to keep going.
Yeah.
And there's so many misconceptions and misinformation about how babies should be fed. And I think that, unfortunately, too many physicians don't understand the physiology of lactation, how to help women when they encounter problems with breastfeeding. And that's a big part of it, because, breastfeeding, we think of it as, it's this natural thing that we should all just know how to do as women. But the reality is very different. Many, many women encounter issues breastfeeding. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, understand that, and then figure out kind of the game plan to help women get the help that they need, get the support that they need. One of the things in this country that has been a huge, I think, help to women was the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, which allowed women to have access to breast pumps, and breastfeeding counseling and support services were now considered an essential health benefit, and women had those services covered under insurance, whereas before the Affordable Care Act, those provisions were not mandatory at all and were quite the exception rather than the rule.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then also the part about employers needing to provide a clean space to pump milk that's not a bathroom. That's been a big one. We've seen that. We saw that pass different states individually, and then now it covers the whole country, right?
Exactly. That was actually a provision within the Affordable Care Act to basically mandate that large employers do provide a clean, non-bathroom place for women to express milk. Now, it doesn't cover all workers because not all employers have to abide by that provision. And then, though it's in the law, it's not necessarily followed by everybody, and certainly enforcement is a big question mark. But knowing that there is that expectation in place, and that women can go and ask their employers and their bosses for that is really important. It's part of the job that we need to do to build that awareness that women have the right to a clean, non-bathroom place to pump milk. Yeah. And that's huge. Another interesting thing is, the laws around public breastfeeding. Only recently did sort of the last, I think, 2 or 3 states in the country sort of pass laws making sure that that women have the right to breastfeed in public. So we think about, kind of the norms around how we feed our children. The fact that breastfeeding was somehow considered indecent or subject to indecency laws, is bizarre. And thankfully, we are starting to move out of that paradigm and into a paradigm where we're seeing more women breastfeeding out in public, and that's really, really important to change the perception and the culture around breastfeeding, because for too long in this country it's been something that was looked down upon in many circles and in some communities. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think I'll be very direct and say, women's bodies are sexualized in this country to a degree that is, unhelpful when it comes to trying to feed our babies. And so it's shifting that as well. And so for all the listeners here, if you have been a breastfeeding mom or you are a breastfeeding mom, then you can totally relate to a lot of this. And if you're not a breastfeeding mom, you still have a role to play, which is to say that, you can support other breastfeeding moms when you talk to them, when you see them, if someone, talks to you or needs support. There's a lot that other people can do that aren't directly breastfeeding themselves. And so that goes for that support system around the mom, but also then the broader, the workplace. If you're a boss, if you have employees, really think about, are you complying with the law to provide a clean, space that's not a bathroom. And it doesn't have to be a dedicated space 24/7 that sits there empty until someone needs it. It can be used for other things. It just has to be available when she needs it. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So there's a lot that people can do in the support system, in the workplace, and then at the policy level. And Lucy, I want to hear about other things that you're working on. I know breastfeeding is a big part of the 1,000 days, but what else? What other kinds of things?
So one of the things that we advocate for at 1,000 Days is ensuring that all families have access to healthy, nutritious foods. And for low-income moms in this country, that often means the WIC program, the Women, Infant, and Children program, as well as the SNAP program, or colloquially called the food stamps program. And it's really critical that both mom and baby during those first 1,000 days get the nutrition that they need and healthy, nutritious foods. Because during pregnancy, what a mom eats is basically what a baby is eating. And the nutrients that's in mom's food really are the building blocks for that baby's brain, that baby's muscles, their organs, and so much of what is happening during pregnancy is impacted by a woman's nutrition and, of course, also by a woman's health, both her physical and mental health. So ensuring that women have access to high quality, comprehensive health insurance is another big part of our advocacy role, in addition to the food aspect. And then once baby is born, whether a mom decides to breastfeed or she has to use formula, we want to make sure that women have access both to the breastfeeding support that she needs, but also if she needs and she decides to use formula, for those families who struggle to afford formula, the WIC program is there. And then finally, when babies start to eat food, complementary food as we call them, to complement either formula feeding or breastfeeding, that they get healthy, nutritious diets. And so that means a lot of fruits and vegetables. That means lean proteins. So we are very active in looking at the diets of infants and toddlers in this country. And I'm not sure if you know this, but the U.S. government is working on the first ever set of dietary guidelines for children under 2 and pregnant women. So we are tracking that process. We're meeting with different partners and stakeholders, and we're trying to get groups interested and involved, because we want these dietary guidelines to be based on science and really the process free from sort of the commercial interests that might be wanting to engage on these dietary guidelines. It's too important, really, that women and families really in the United States have sort of the best information possible around what they should be feeding their children.
And so, just to be clear, we've had dietary guidelines on other age groups, but this is the first time they're focusing on under 2 years old?
Yes, that's right. So our dietary guidelines that are currently in existence start from the age of 2 up. So this is the first set, and it is scheduled to be released in 2020. So the dietary guidelines usually are updated every 4 or so years. So we're tracking that process, and as I said, we're engaging different groups to ensure that these guidelines are the best they can be, that are based on science. And
are you specifically are they specifically including the mom, the pregnant mom in that?
Yes.
Or did you have to try to fight for that to be included?
No, they are including pregnant women in that, pregnant and lactating women. And so to try to understand what the nutritional needs of pregnant women are, for not only for the baby's health, but of course for the woman's own health and well-being.
Well, I'm glad to see that, because for the longest time, it seemed that the focus was only on the baby. Like once the baby was born, then we, then we have all kinds of information and all this. And the early baby days were, sort of excluded the mom. It was like a completely separate, unit.
That's right.
And actually it's so interrelated, clearly.
It is. And that's something that we're trying to change. Here at 1,000 Days, we talk about both the mom and baby, because without a healthy mom, there's no way that you can have a healthy, thriving baby. I mean, that's just sort of the biological reality, but, it's also sort of a reality that we have to really examine culturally in terms of the policies that we have to support women, to help women, and to empower women, to make the best choices for themselves, which sort of brings me back to breastfeeding, because, lactation is a part of a woman's natural reproductive cycle. So it's important that we do everything that we can to help women breastfeed for their own health. So breastfeeding reduces a woman's risk of breast cancer. It reduces a woman's risk of ovarian cancer. It reduces a woman's risk of heart disease, diabetes, and even postpartum depression. So it plays such an important role in women's health. Cardiovascular disease or heart disease is a leading killer of women in the United States. So whatever we can do to help bring that rate down is so important, which is why breastfeeding, is such a critical piece of that puzzle. Same thing with breast cancer. It's the leading cause of death from cancer in women is breast cancer. So we have these breast cancer walks and these marches, and, we need to find a cure for breast cancer. But until we find a cure, let's do everything we can to minimize a woman's risk of developing breast cancer. And that's why women who choose to have babies, let's encourage them and try to support them as best we can to breastfeed.
Yeah, it's such a fine line and a difficult message that I find that you all are trying to work on, because there's the message that you just shared, which is so incredibly important, to try to really support women to breastfeed for all of these reasons, for the health of the baby, for their health, and all the rest of it. And then at the same time, we don't want to shame women who didn't breastfeed and make them feel guilty and think that they've done something wrong. So it's like we want to support them as well, but not dilute the message that, yes, breastfeeding is really important.
That's right. There is so much guilt and pain in that conversation, and I think it goes to sort of the cultural aspects of this debate. I mean, breastfeeding is difficult, and when you don't have a support system around you, whether that's families or workplaces or friends or communities, that makes it all the more challenging. And when women fail at breastfeeding for whatever reason, they blame themselves, and add to that these messages that they hear from organizations like ours, even, that, hey, breastfeeding is really important and we need to do this and we need to help women. And there are those individual cases, and unfortunately they are more common than we want them to be, of women who just don't succeed at breastfeeding. And then there are just women that choose not to. They decide very early on that's not something they want to do, and that's fine too. But I think what we're trying to do is make sure that, number one, women have all the information about the benefits of breastfeeding and the risks of not breastfeeding. And so make that informed choice. And number two, that they have the support that they need. In this country, the CDC just came out with a report that says, 4 out of 5 women start out breastfeeding. The numbers are really high. So it shows that, some of those messages are getting across, that yes, this is really important and the support is there maybe early on. So that's great. But the problem is that number drops dramatically in the first 3 months after a baby is born. It drops to about 47% of women are breastfeeding their baby exclusively. So that means nothing else, no supplementation, no formula, no anything else at 3 months of age. So that indicates that mom has encountered problems, has had to go back to work, the breastfeeding just wasn't available to her anymore, or she simply decided she wanted to stop. So that to me speaks to a lack of support. When you have such a high number of women starting out, but then dropping off by 3 months, it's sort of broader than just, I think, individual decisions. It's probably decisions that women sort of are forced to make because they didn't get the help they need, they didn't get the support they need,
or they have to go back to work. Yeah. When they have to go back to work, it drops off for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So just to wrap up this part of the interview, what can people do? Like you're working at the policy level and the advocacy level in Washington, D.C., but what can all the people out in the, listeners right now, how can they get involved?
Well, I think the policy level, changing policy, changing systems, changing cultures, it's big. It's a big, heavy lift, and it takes all of us, right? So I think, number one, what are the policies that can help support families writ large, whether we're talking about breastfeeding or we're talking about healthy diets and ensuring that that people have access to healthcare, and really kind of thinking about that and thinking about, do we as a country support healthy, thriving families, and do our politicians that many of us are going to vote hopefully in November, and think about who is talking about helping families and helping families in this country succeed, and what do those policy proposals and ideas and positions look like. So I think that should go kind of without saying. Another thing that you alluded to is that we all have a role to play. Here at 1,000 Days we like to say nobody breastfeeds alone, and it's true. Whether you're a woman or a man or a grandparent or, a boss, owner of a company, you can have an impact on ensuring that women are set up to succeed when it comes to caring for their babies. So I think that's part of it. Another thing is just changing the cultural norms, what we see and how we talk about breastfeeding and how we talk about the health and well-being of babies. There are individual decisions at play, but breastfeeding is a public health issue at a population level. Children that are breastfed longer, women that breastfeed longer are healthier. And so, remembering that, yes, maybe you chose to formula feed your baby, or, you were formula fed like I was, and hey, there's nothing wrong with me. But at a population health level, it's really important that we understand actually that this is a really critical thing that we all need to support and show in a positive way. And I think we definitely see that on social media a lot more. Discussions around normalizing breastfeeding and a lot more images of women breastfeeding and that sort of thing. And I think that, holding companies also accountable, companies that make baby foods, infant formula, et cetera, for playing by the rules to, for making sure that they are marketing their products in a responsible manner and that their products are safe and nutritionally complete. One of the things that, we've been watching is this, this discussion around some of the popular breakfast cereals that are fed to, many babies and toddlers in this country, containing, high levels of glyphosate, which, is potentially a cancer-causing chemical. And so, thinking about our food system and how we vote with our consumer dollars, and that's something that everybody can do, choosing to buy, the products that, are safest and healthiest for our families, and holding companies account to delivering, safe products to consumers.
Okay, great. So, Lucy, we're moving into the segment called Superpowers for Success, where we talk to you more personally about you as a leader. And I'll ask you some questions, and really the answers are meant to sort of help and share your experience and inspire other women out there listening, because you have reached a leadership role in your career and in your life that I think is interesting to share with others. So the first question is, what does success in life mean for you?
Wow, that's a big question, and I'm not sure I'm fully prepared to answer that, so I'm going to stumble through this answer. So I think for me, I started my career in business and started my career in finance, and then moved into marketing. And there came a point where I was probably in my mid-30s where I realized I wasn't doing work that was aligned with my values. And that's when I sort of decided to switch gears. And I left my job, and I was working in the fashion industry in New York City at the time, very exciting. And I decided I'd, go volunteer for a nonprofit organization working in sub-Saharan Africa. Now I had, the ability to do that. I had the luxury of doing that. And many people can't just, quit their job and go sort of pursue a passion or a dream. But for me, it was, I knew I would have to make trade-offs and sacrifices if I wanted to have a career and work that was not just personally satisfying, but that was aligned with my values. And to me, that's a big part of how I define my success. Am I doing something that is helping other people, and am I doing something that's in service to others?
Yeah.
So that's how I sort of look at that aspect of my world.
Yeah.
And then,
go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I did see on your bio, and I was going to ask you, so I'm glad you brought it up, that you had a background in business working for big companies, big Fortune 500 companies. And I thought it was an interesting transition that you made from that into the advocacy policy world. And I love how you just laid that out, because a lot of women ask me this, and the women that I mentor and work with ask me, about my career trajectory and especially younger women getting started, they want to have everything planned out in a straight line, and it all makes sense. And actually, when you speak to people later in their careers or mid-career, it's never a straight line, right?
No.
It's never a straight line. It's like, well, I got into this because, and rarely, I mean, sometimes we're working in the area that we got our degree in, but, not always.
That's right. I didn't set out to sort of be in the business world. I actually had a degree in political science, and thought I would sort of pursue a career in diplomacy, because I was interested in international affairs, and then opportunities presented themselves. I had to make choices, and my career took that sort of turn. And so, yeah, it's not a straight line. In fact, when people look at my bio or resume, they're often puzzled. They don't see kind of the linear story until I sort of explain it and explain why I made those choices. So I think part of it is also just luck and timing. Don't underestimate the importance of those two factors of having sort of a lucky break, which I certainly did, in being at the right place at the right time or knowing the right people. And also just the timing. For me, I found this opportunity to start up 1,000 Days and lead it at a time in my life where I didn't have children at the time, but then soon after I started working at 1,000 Days, I became pregnant, and then I was going through that 1,000-day journey myself. So I approached this issue from a very sort of intellectual standpoint. And then, as I, became pregnant and then gave birth to my child and became a mom, and I also struggled to breastfeed, these issues that I was talking about in an abstract way became very real, very personal, and that, made me sort of see this role, not just from the intellectual standpoint, but sort of from the emotional or human standpoint.
It became super personal.
Exactly. And don't underestimate that either. I think, approaching, career decisions and decisions we make about our life, both with the head and the heart. I think we need both. And when they're both aligned, I think that's when, you're going back to your earlier question about what success looks like and what success is. That, for me is another metric of success. So yeah, I'm excited that I'm able to share a little bit about how I got to where I got, and hopefully help and inspire others that are kind of thinking about their careers and their lives and what they might do to make a difference.
Yeah. So Lucy, when did you know you were really good at what you do?
I don't know that I ever know that I'm really good at what I do. In fact, somebody said to me, you let your imposter syndrome get the better of you. And it was, I had heard that term before, but I've never heard it in a way that it was being it was in reference to something I was feeling about myself. I don't have a background in nutrition. I don't have a background in public health. But I work with people who are among the world's leading experts on some of these issues. And let me tell you, I often feel like I don't belong here. I shouldn't be in this room with these really brilliant people that understand this issue, that have been researching this issue, that know the intricacies of all of these things. And I have struggled with that. if I'm being really honest. But what I do know how to do is, take complicated ideas and make them, sort of make them a little bit easier to understand, market them, sell them, promote them, and use the platform that I have, that I'm lucky to have, quite frankly.
When did you figure out that you were good at that? Like, when did you realize that you were good at that?
I think in my current job, it was,
or just in your life, in my
life.
Yeah.
Gosh, I think I'm still figuring that out. I think I'm still figuring out what I'm good at. There wasn't, I wish I could say there was a moment that things clicked for me. I will say there was a moment when it clicked for me that I wasn't doing what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And that was a very powerful moment. It was almost like an out of body experience. I was in a meeting and I was, being told that my job was to stress over every detail of this piece of garment. This garment, I needed to stress over every seam, every button, every zipper. And I thought, how did I end up here? How did I end up in this place where this was my purpose in life? And that was that was the moment where I thought, I'm in the wrong field. I'm in the wrong job. I need to press the stop button, right? It's like you're watching a videotape of yourself, like, okay, let's stop it here. And now, sort of try to do something different. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so, every day for me is a learning experience, and I never think, I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm good at getting other people on board with ideas, and that's really, really, really important, no matter what you do or where you are, because whatever you're trying to do, chances are you're not going to be able to do it completely by yourself, especially when you're moving big boulders, like, you're trying to push a policy proposal forward or a piece of legislation or try to get more funding. That usually takes work from, colleagues and partners and allies. And so that's critical. Building coalition, building alliances, building partnerships is a skill set that I would encourage. And I think as women, we're naturals at that, right? We understand relationships at a sort of different and deeper level than a lot of men do. And so it's a natural talent that we have. The one sort of piece of advice I would provide your listeners is to say that as we're building, partnerships, and we're building these coalitions, and we're getting groups together, and we're getting people on board, not to underestimate or undersell your own role in that. And I think that's a mistake, certainly, that I've made in not talking specifically about my contributions, because it feels uncomfortable. It feels arrogant or egotistical to talk about what you did that led to success. But it's really, really, really important that you be your own best advocate, whether at the workplace or as you're giving birth to a baby. Talk about what you need and what you've done to make something successful, or to bring an idea forward. Take credit. I know it's not a natural thing. Yeah,
I love that, because that's a lot of what I talk about on the show, and a lot of what I teach and share is, empowerment, right? Like using your voice, speaking up, taking credit, being visible, being heard. And it's so important. It's important to do that in all areas of your life.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Lucy, this kind of goes right into the next question, which is, what superpower did you discover you had only to realize it was there all the time?
I think my superpower is being a compassionate mother. And I bring that into my work. So I never thought of myself as kind of someone who would love babies and love motherhood as much as I do. I wasn't that that little girl who grew up, playing with dolls and wanting to be the mommy. I wanted to be a diplomat or a lawyer or, so many other things. And I definitely prioritized my career, in my 20s and in my 30s, ambitious, etc. But I love being a mother. I love babies, and I love sort of trying to understand little kids and help teach them, right, about the world and about how they should deal with their own challenges. And I think that is a superpower that I bring not only to my family, but also to my work. The compassion for other children and other mothers. I mean, our work is not just focused on the United States, but globally, and some of the challenges that women face globally living in developing countries and in poor countries and poor communities. I think that is, I try to bring that compassion superpower into that work, to try to understand what that must be like, and to try to do everything I can to maybe try to make her life a little bit better and a little bit easier.
I love that. Okay, yeah. And then can you describe a personal habit that contributes to your well-being? And I ask this because so many leaders that I talk to, in order for you to show up the way you do in the world and do what you do, there has to be a certain level of, wellness and well-being and taking care of yourself. And I think that it's important to share some of that with women who are wondering, like, how does she do it all? So, yeah. So what's a personal habit?
Yeah. So my biggest piece of advice here is there is no balance. There is no work-life balance. That is a myth. Forget about that. And instead of thinking about balance, think about boundaries and setting boundaries around work. And sometimes you have to do that, right? Sometimes you have to say, you know what? No, I from 4:30 p.m. on, I have to, it's my second shift. I have to go home and be mom. And, from 4:30 until 8 p.m. when my kids go to bed, there's no emails, there's no conference calls, there's nothing that intrudes on that time. And then the opposite is true. So, if I have to leave my family on a Saturday because I'm going on a business trip, or I have to go speak at a conference, that's the boundary. And, I have to negotiate with my husband or with my family on how we manage childcare. So boundaries, because balance, it sort of assumes that there are two equal parts, and those equal parts need to be living in equilibrium with each other.
Right.
And that's not the case. Sometimes, if you have something urgent going on at work, that has to take the priority. And of course, your family's well-being and health is always the priority in many respects, but you have to, kind of put it in its place sometimes and in order to deal with other things. And so, they're not equal parts of life that need to be juggled. It's just, how do you negotiate those boundaries and set those boundaries in a very, very clear way that everybody around you understands.
Yeah,
and
I love that, because balance, I always say balance is elusive. Like it's that thing that, like, you can never really achieve because it's not real, and so I like, and I talk about boundaries a lot, so I love that you brought that up. What advice would you give your younger self, say 15 years ago, 20 years ago?
I would say have fun along the way. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves as women sometimes, especially if we want to try to, do it all, be it all, be successful, look great, have a great social life, travel, be interesting, have hobbies, and then, of course, meet the perfect partner and settle down and maybe, have family if you want that. We put so much pressure on ourselves. And I think, just enjoying life, enjoying the ride. I know it's easier said than done, but that would be the piece of advice I would give my younger self. Like, have fun and enjoy the good moments and enjoy the absurdity sometimes of it all.
Yeah. Lucy, what is your biggest challenge right now as a mom and an executive director and everything else that you're doing?
I think the biggest challenge, if I'm honest, is this external environment, this political environment that we're living in this country. That both personally and professionally. And let me talk about the professional part first. We're an advocacy organization, and part of what we do is to build the political will for policymakers, whether in the U.S. or globally, to take action to help support vulnerable moms and babies. And it's hard in this environment where, the priority is not vulnerable people. In fact, one could argue that they're the targets as the United States is looking to cut its social safety net programs, as the United States is looking to cut foreign assistance programs that help people in poor countries. That's difficult. That's really difficult. We've had to go on defense instead of trying to work with different policymakers. And that's been a challenge. And I think personally, that's also a challenge because, I think I look at what's happening in terms of the divisiveness in this country and some of the ugly rhetoric against immigrants. I'm a child of immigrants, and I want to teach my children why that is an important part of our history and our future as a country. And I think about the kind of country that we are currently and that we're becoming. And I think about what is the United States that my two little girls are going to grow up in? What does that look like? And am I doing everything that I can to build a better country for their future, sort of, politically, culturally, socially? And I that causes me sort of a lot of anxiety and stress and loss of sleep at night sometimes.
Okay. We are just about out of time. I have two very quick questions for you. Well, I don't know if they're quick, but do you identify as a feminist?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's quick.
That's quick.
Sometimes it's a longer conversation. Okay, and then what are you reading right now? What's on your nightstand?
It's a book by Timothy Snyder called On Tyranny, and it's a very small book, but it's history lessons, very short, concise history lessons around living in authoritarian environments and how we as Americans can sort of be more cognizant and live in a way that resists the creeping authoritarianism that we might be seeing in this country and certainly around the world.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I have that book. It's frightening. It's a little tiny book, isn't it? It's like a little pocket book kind of thing.
It is, and that's why it's on my nightstand, because that's about all I can manage these days.
Although that's a heavy kind of topic for right before bed, but I know it's
little book, heavy topic. I think that's the perfect combination.
Well, Lucy, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today.
It's been great being here. Thanks for such an interesting conversation and challenging questions.
That's it for our show today. Remember, if you need support to live your Well Woman life, head over to wellwomanlife.com/Facebook to join us. Our monthly live event, Well Woman Drinks, brings women together to share our successes and challenges as women, leaders, moms, aunts, sisters, and all the other roles we carry. If you'd like to attend a Well Woman Drinks near you, or if there isn't one in your city yet and you'd like to start one, email info@wellwomanlife.com. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and subscribe in iTunes and leave a review. This helps raise visibility, which is super helpful when it comes to producing the show every week. For feedback, comments, or just to let me know you were listening today, find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @WellWomanLife. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.